Sweet. Dr. Hamilton Allen.
Indeed.
What are you a doctor of?
Entomology. And so for those that aren't familiar with the term entomology, that means that I studied six-legged organisms, insects, and sometimes spiders, but spiders aren't insects, but spiders too. Throw them in the bag.
Wait, so what's a spider?
It's an arachnid.
Yeah, an arachnid.
Yeah. Insects, go by the second grade or third grade insects, 3 body parts, 6 legs, antennae, things like that. Okay. Sometimes wings. Spiders, 2 body parts.
What's
4 pairs of legs.
What's another arachnid?
Like a daddy long.
But
they're not spiders. They're kind of similar. But spiders are essentially arachnids. That would be the spiders are the arachnids.
And daddy long legs are technically, is that like more in your world? Like if obviously you're in your community of entomologists, how dare you say a daddy long?
Yeah, no.
Right? Like
who are you?
Who are you exactly?
Where's his papers?
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So,
but they're all within the same grouping. Arthropods, insects.
Okay.
Yeah, we're all in the same gang.
Okay. So let's start from the beginning, because I don't know if there's that many entomologists running around. Are there a lot of entomologists running around?
Yeah, there's a fair share of entomologists running around. People do all kinds of things. When you think about food production, a lot of entomologists work within those areas because, insects love fruits and vegetables and trees and all those kinds of things. So they're there where you're dealing with forestry, any kind of lumber, anything like that. Insects are there feeding on the trees. Going back to the, agricultural component, you have bees that are consistently involved with pollination. Then you have people like myself who work in pest control. You have people that work for food manufacturers. Every single food item that is produced has a minimum number of insect parts that can be in it. So your peanut butter does have pieces of beetles in it and ants, but it's only a small amount. So we're all over the place. Every state has a state entomologist. You here in San Francisco, if you ever have a question about any insect that you see at your house, you can contact the local county extension agent office. They'll give you information on how to control it and what it is actually. So we're all over the place. And then you have their university professors.
Right. I could see, obviously, in academia where there'd be representation. So are we screwed with the bees? I've heard that there's a shortage in that.
So the domestic bee has had its fair share of hardships, but we're doing okay. We're still trying to figure out there was something that was taking place a few years ago called colony collapse disorder, where colonies were just disappearing and dying off. And we put a lot of resources and energy into trying to figure out what that was. Some of it was diseases, some of it was predatory insects, and some of it was just bad beekeeping. But we're still continuing to try to fight that fight. But if you want to become a local beekeeper and raise some bees on your own, there's always an opportunity to do so. And that's one of the ways that we can keep those populations up and running strong.
So, yeah, if you could, you probably would be much more articulate about explaining why we need bees, or we need a strong population of bees.
Well, there's positives and negatives to it. Okay. So the reason that we in the United States like to have so many bees, especially in California, is because bees are extreme pollinators. Right. And so people bring in hives, thousands of hives, and put them by their crops, and they want that pollination, that natural process of taking, pollen from one plant and bring it to another plant, and increasing the reproductive value of that plant. Sure. So it's important there, but we use a genetic line of bees that isn't the strongest. They're continually being, reproduced. They're continually being forced into reproduction. So they aren't as hardy as some of the natural occurring bees that we see out there. Honeybees. I
think you might have froze there for a second. Let's see.
Also have that pollination influence.
Okay.
But primarily the reason that we want them in the United States is for agriculture.
And if we were to come to a point where there was a shortage, where would we see that first?
Things like almonds.
Almonds.
Almonds for sure. Some blueberries, some grapes, but really almonds. Almonds are really one of the key ones. A few years ago, that's what the primary concern was the almond industry in California. Pretty much, it could be decimated if there aren't any bees.
Is there any truth? Oh, go ahead.
No, it's just because I'm all for precision agriculture and large scale agriculture to a degree because we needed to feed our population. But we mass produce food. And so some of the things that we are doing out in the field are more so not about the quality of the fruit, it's more so just about production.
Mm-hmm.
And when you end up with an unnatural system, like what we see with bringing those bees in and some of the parcels of land that we use, it's not the most beneficial for all involved.
And this is something that an entomologist would working on with our food company or farmers,
just large scale food production
period. Okay.
And even at the lower levels, people still use bees, but at the lower levels, it's not as egregious. At the higher levels, the hive health is of importance, but the dollar is more important than anything else.
Absolutely.
But with anything, it's pros and cons.
Sure. Well, I'm glad you put it that way because, I think it's really weird as we talk about bees. Like, I don't know about you, and that's what I'm more fascinated by because my early introduction into bees, and I would probably argue insects, were that they are not good, right? That kill that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Legit, like murder this thing, even though it necessarily didn't do anything to you. I have no idea where that came from, right? Like I don't know the origins behind the hatred of insects.
Whenever I used to I give presentations all the time regarding insects, and one slide that I always bring up is like Little Miss Muffet. Now this was for a spider, but this same idea could be applied to any insect. Yeah. Little Miss Muffet sat on top of it, eating her curds in the way. Along came a spider and sat down beside her, and then she ran away. But humans have this natural, aversion to insects. They're small. They got a bunch of legs. They got weird eyes. They're kind of alien looking. And as a result, and, some of it's positives because some of these things have, distinct colorations, really bright colors, really large bodies, and they can inflict pain upon you. So it is natural for us to want to remove ourselves from that space. But, through nursery rhyme and then some unforgiving parental teachings, we do believe that insects, everything is out to get you. I get emails all the time. What is this? They don't really want to know what it is. They really want to know, is it going to hurt me?
Right.
No, it's not. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I have the same way. So I do open water swimming. And last week, 5 seals followed me to where I was going, right? But I don't see them as a threat. I'm not really the only time I see them as a threat is if I'm if I'm swimming near one of the pups. Like if I'm swimming near one of the pups, then I want to be very mindful about how close I am or how close or whatever it may be. Because if the parents get territorial, then that could be a problem, right? But when I tell people, there are sharks in the bay where I swim, but there haven't been any cases in the bay where they've attacked people, right? And they're kind of doing their own thing. So it's interesting when I have these conversations with people like, oh yeah, I went open my swim. You're not scared, you're not threatened. I'm like, well, not really. You know what I mean? And it's not the exact same, but there are some similarities with just our approach to other forms of life. Like if it's not human, then we're like, well, what?
Yeah, humans, I think we have fragile egos too, Here we are at the top of the food chain. Hey, I'm a mighty man, but there's an ant. Oh my gosh, it is going to kill me.
Yeah.
Like, no, it's not really going to do anything like that. And most people are worried about, spider bites. You hear these things like, over the course of your life, you'll ingest, 50 spiders or anything like that. There's never been one time where I've woken up and there was a spider in my mouth. Like never. That's never happened.
Oh,
So it's just kind of a falsehood that's out there.
interesting. That's weird. Sorry, seem to have went out. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay. Either way, so yeah, it's like it's false. It's not. There's no science or data to support the idea that you eat.
Absolutely none.
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 That is fascinating.
Yeah,
So where does
it's a
stuff
bunch
like
of
that?
little myths.
Where does stuff like that come around? Like, how do we do that?
Now, the gestation of it, I can't tell you that, but things just get passed along. And if it sounds cool, I mean, people are more concerned with the headline than the real story. And it sounds, hey, Joe, when you go to bed, let me tell you what, you eat spiders every single night. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Hey, if you eat a watermelon, you eat the seed, a watermelon is going to grow in your stomach. And it's the same thing, essentially.
Yeah.
It sounds good, but no, I'm not eating daddy long legs or black widows at night. And God, that's a tasty old black widow. That never happens.
So were you exposed to this early on? Did you know that entomology was going to be the route that you took in academia?
No, I didn't. Well, once I got to college, yeah, but early on, heck no. I knew that, I grew up in South Carolina and we had issues with fire ants. So my grandmother, had all these, and if you got to be from the Southeast to really know them. There's some in California, but primarily in the Southeast. They produce these nice dome-shaped mounds. So just think about a hunk of dirt.
Yep.
This mound here.
Sure.
Whatever you think about when you think of the typical anthill, they
Mhm.
make these things. But when you disturb them, they send out these alarm pheromones, and thousands to millions of ants are released with one purpose in mind, and that is to protect the queen or the multiple queens that could be in that colony.
Okay.
Because some ant colonies have more than one queen. So they send out worker ants to defend the queen because she is their sole reproductive source. She's producing all the eggs, and they're looking to bite and sting. And so we had these things in our yard, and my uncle would come by on the weekend, and he would say, Hamilton, we're going to kill ants today. And I'm like, what does that mean? What it meant was we're going to take boiling water, we're going to take grits, and then we're going to take gasoline and fire and set these mounds on fire. So here I am, 8 years old. My job is to play with fire and kill ants. I'm like, yeah, sign me up, buddy.
Right.
But we couldn't get rid of them. And that kind of stuck with me throughout school. When I was like in elementary school, middle school, I just always wonder, why can't we get rid of these ants?
Sure.
Why is it that when we think we're getting rid of one, the next week, instead of one, they're like 5 or 6 mounds. They're smaller, but now these things have multiplied. What's going on here? And then I got to college and started reading about ants and found out, whoa, there's some cool stuff going on here. And that's why we couldn't get rid of them.
Sure. So we went to college together at undergraduate time at Norfolk State University. And my mind is blanking. What did you study in undergrad?
Biology.
So you started off in biology, and once you got there, that's when you kind of took off. So nothing during like high school, no like interest. Was it always science?
It was always science.
Okay.
In high school, I had the idea, I'm going to be a molecular biologist, or I'm going to be a doctor or anything like that. But pursuing entomology as a career was not on my mind. But I always held the fire ants near to my heart.
Okay.
And I lived in Maryland when I was in high school, but whenever I would go home to South Carolina to visit my family, I would always check on the ants. I was always interested in nature and organisms.
Nature. Really. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's something that I was exposed to early growing up here in San Francisco. I think it's I was fortunate to be in a place that had nature in education. I would actually argue the school too, because not everyone has that. But it's a very conscientious place when it comes to natural spaces. So what was that? Yeah, I would assume. Well, you said high school in Maryland. What was school like? Was it?
I went to
private, public? What?
It was a public school in Oxon Hill, Maryland, Potomac High School. It was all black high school.
All black high school.
Yeah, right on the border. It was in Oxon Hill, Maryland, but that borders Southeast DC. Okay. Southern Ave was literally across the street, essentially. Gotcha. So, I moved from South Carolina. I moved to the big city I was in Maryland, but the big city of DC, and it was it was totally different.
Totally different. So what?
Yeah.
So much. Oh, so you grew up in a situation where there were other like black students, other black, science focused students.
No,
No,
no.
one of the few.
One of the few. Yeah. My school was, I mean, it wasn't as bad as Lean on Me, but it was pretty thorough. It was pretty thorough. I learned some things really quickly. Oh, I left South Carolina because I got into a few fights as a kid and whatnot. But here I am moving to Maryland. I think like, yeah, I'm hard. No. You
Chance.
need to read books, young fella.
Yeah.
Yeah, thugging is not for you.
And so who made the call for you to move? Was that
It was my aunt. Well, it was me really.
okay?
And then my aunts facilitated movement for me.
Okay. So what was the transition like? Was it relatively easy for you?
Heck no, because they essentially changed me. They were like, you're gonna get involved in activities. So one of the things they wanted me to do was bowl. So on the weekends, I would have to go bowl in this league. I hated it. I was like, I'm supposed to be at home listening to my music,
Yeah.
just chilling, kicking it. I don't need to be doing that. Or I remember once my aunt said, hey, we're going to see the Alvin Ailey dancers. I said, I don't care about Alvin Ailey and his dancers. I don't want to go do that.
Man,
And I didn't go.
interesting. I mean, hey,
Because I was just so entrenched in how I was growing up, and I just wasn't open to anything. I had a really negative attitude because I was just fearful of change, and I thought they were trying to change me when they were just trying to expose me to different things.
sure. I mean, not all change is necessarily bad either. I mean,
Yeah.
change is inevitable, but specifically when you're talking about Alvin Ailey, I mean, I don't know unless someone's really exposing you to that early,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm assuming that's exactly what they were doing. They were like, no, I just need to see it. And then, yeah, just as a kid, I don't know how many kids are into the ballet, right?
Yeah.
Period. And probably similar thing, maybe more kids should be exposed to the arts. Same way you were one of the few at your school that were into science, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something drew you, and it just so happened an experience drew you to science, right? Like you're talking about fire ants, and if you're a kid that's growing up in an area where you just don't see the point or the purpose, and it's not promoted at home or promoted within your respective communities, then you're like, well,
What
yeah,
was the purpose? But even though I didn't do that at that time, that always stuck with me. But I appreciate them for at
sure,
least trying to introduce me to different things. I didn't have to like everything,
no,
which I totally didn't. But the fact that they attempted to do so, both of them had gone to college. They went to HBCUs. They went to North Carolina A&T. So
okay,
they had different experiences that I just didn't have. But
gotcha.
they knew that I had some wherewithal and wanted to just, hey, encourage me and push me in that right direction.
Is
Just to not be afraid and to try.
Yeah,
Don't be limited by what you see on a day in and day out basis.
absolutely. Is that why you chose Norfolk State, or is that why you even explored historically black colleges? Because I mean, um, yeah, I mean, I found that more normal. I don't know, like it was pretty normal for me to leave the West Coast, but I didn't know a ton of people that went to historically black
Mm-hmm.
colleges. That was more, that was an easy decision for me because I knew what I was exposed to early on and being in
Mm-hmm.
predominantly white schools. And I knew, I was like, oh, well, yeah, historically black college makes perfect sense if I don't want to continue to be in the same learning environments. So was that something that like was
So,
promoted, or was that strictly like, nah, this is what I want to do?
well, promotion for it started when I was like a kid watching like A Different World.
Oh, of course.
That was,
Right.
that was the heavy promotion. Like, what
Yeah.
in the world is going on here? This looks exciting. They were having a great time. And I had glasses. I wanted to be Dwayne Wayne. He was a nerd. I was like, this guy's cool. But when I was in high school, my uncle's brother played basketball for Hampton.
Okay.
And so, living in Maryland, we got to go to all the basketball games. So I was at Maryland Eastern Shore weekends. I was on a school night. I was at Coppin State. I was at Howard. I was at all of these different schools watching basketball. But I was really sitting there thinking, oh my gosh,
Right.
this is college.
Yeah.
This is all of us here. You
Hmm.
know, I didn't feel out of place. I was 14, but I felt like I belonged. You
Hmm.
know, I'll be in the crowd. You know, I got my Jordans on and my Mecca. I was wearing all that kind of stuff. And I thought I was looking sweet. I thought the girls were looking at me. They are not paying you any attention, buddy.
Girl.
But it was an excitement and a feeling and this camaraderie that was there that made me say, I want to go there.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's got to be. I mean, I think that's the idea is crazy because I think that there are so many people, and I would say specifically Black students, who don't on
Mm-hmm.
grow up in the East Coast or the South, or where the historically Black colleges are accessible. Just like a quick, you could go up and down the coast from where you were in South Carolina and hit 5 to 6 different.
Mm-hmm.
And um, that was your first experience of college, and
Mm-hmm.
that's interesting in itself because stereotypically when we think about colleges in the country, and generalizing here, we think about large schools like you went large football sports
Mm-hmm.
programs like the other schools that you eventually went to, right?
Mm-hmm.
um, and yeah, so that's interesting that that was your initial feeling being accepted when you were only like 14.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It was cool. It was,
that's super cool, man.
yeah, it was nothing like it. And then how I really got to Norfolk State is that during the Super Bowl, and I think it was like the Packers and Patriots, I can't, or the Broncos and Packers, something like that.
Yeah.
Like in the year 2001, basically,
Mm-hmm.
my aunt came across this scholarship application, this program called Denemus at Norfolk State, which is for students going into math and applied sciences. And she says, hey, you need to complete this application. And so you're going to go upstairs. You're not watching any more of the Super Bowl. You got to go up here and write this
Oh,
application. I said, I'm not going to get it, so I'm not going to write it. She forced me to write it. And then like a month and a half later, I found out I got the full scholarship. And that's really how I went to Norfolk State, because I wanted to go to Clark Atlanta or Morris Brown.
I'm almost kind of glad that you didn't.
Yeah. Nah, me too. I enjoy my Norfolk State. I love my Norfolk State.
I lived in Atlanta for 4 years, and I do think it's a great place to go to school. I also wondered if similar to you, I looked at other schools in different parts of the country, and uh, I don't know if I'd have been ready to. I don't know if I'd have been ready for that amount uh, of socializing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
Clark, and you had Morris Brown, and then you had Spelman, and you just had this. I mean, very vibrant city of educated
Mm-hmm.
folks, and that could be a lot. I mean, I tip my hat to folks who
Oh,
made it,
it's rough.
because it's a huge responsibility to try to focus on your academics. But I would assume that there's similarly to my experience at Norfolk State, where it kind of took someone not well, it took someone or some folks, and then just to be around the energy of people who were striving to be better.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that I talked about this in a podcast before. Like my first year, I was just getting acclimated. I wasn't really enthused about the academic portion. It was more getting used to a social environment that I had no clue really how to read.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't really interested. Oddly enough, when I got there, I had a girlfriend from San Francisco that went to Fordham in New York, and I was going to see her. And then it kind of dawned on she was she was white, and I was always going to see her. And yeah, I never really was like, yeah, come here, right? Like I don't know if to be honest with you, I don't know if it was like I was embarrassed, or I don't know if I was apprehensive because, yeah, I just didn't, it never happened. I was like, well, I'm trying to leave. And like, I think I was more excited about New York. I'm like, New York? I've never been to New York. Like, yeah, I'm going to New York. Like, I want to see what this thing is all about. Well, that didn't last. very much longer. I was around like I got there as I got more comfortable, and yeah, it was a real turning point for me in terms of the attention that I started getting from Black women, because that wasn't necessarily the case here in San Francisco. Just a different culture, different dynamic.
That's
And,
probably why, not just the attention, but not feeling 100% comfortable
yeah,
at the university isn't going to lend itself to you saying, "Hey, come visit me," because you're still trying to grapple and navigate this whole new world. So I can understand that.
yeah, completely. So yeah, either way, it took me until like my second year, and and for me to kind of struggle academically because I was so focused on
Mhm.
fitting in, right? And not to say that I was changing, my personality so much where like, I'm just gonna fit in with these people, but it's more like, oh, like I'm finding out more about who I am and how I operate in this space. But yeah, again, once I kind of got that part, then I was like, oh, now I'm observing people that are like on their grind, and
Mhm.
and and very vocal about it, right? Like very vocal about like, nah, man, like this is what I'm trying to do with my life.
Mhm.
I'm like, oh, damn, okay, yeah. All right, like,
I got you, brother.
okay, all right. So yeah, and I like that. So let me figure out what to do. Now, my route was in broadcast journalism, but working in the studio and eventually getting internships stuff like that. Yeah, I was like, oh, damn, yeah, this is how it all works. So um, so yeah, what was that? All right, so you go to Norfolk State, you major in biology. Um, was there an increase? Yeah, what was that like? Because you said before in Maryland, you were one of the few, and there had to be much more because the NEMIS was a pretty
Yeah.
strong program on
Mhm.
campus. So yeah,
It
what's
was.
that transition like?
I mean, it wasn't a difficult transition whatsoever because I had already gone to this high school where it was all of us together, a lot of Black students. Although, academics weren't our shining star
Okay.
for the school, but going into the program, here you are there were 50 of us that came in as freshmen. And so you had biology students, you had chemistry students, you had physics, you had math,
Mm,
and we all lived together. All the males lived on the same floor, and
mm,
all of the women lived in the same dorm.
mm,
And so we were separated, but we always had classes together and we were around one another. We were sharing exams.
yep.
If there was any kind of study night, we were doing that stuff together. You'll play NBA 2K in between studying. So, I mean, it was the perfect environment. And that program introduced me to internships and gave me, a further introduction into entomology, actually.
Did you see that as like that's interesting because you're a person who obviously ventured out and had um, a social experience outside of that program.
Hmm.
And I think that sometimes, depending on where, yeah, depending on the school or depending on the environment, that, I think historically we've kind of stigmatized people who study mathematics and science as like social outcasts. Like, oh, you're smart, you're intelligent, that means that you belong elsewhere, right?
No, not at Norfolk State.
Right.
The program was, if you were in Denemas, you were golden. People knew that, okay, they're here for academics, but it was just, but people in the program were still social.
Yeah.
We were kind of like, it wasn't a fraternity or sorority by any means,
Mm,
or glee club or anything like that, but there were so many of us.
sure.
And we used to go places as a group.
Hmm.
We had jackets. People knew who we were, and so that helped out. We even had some athletes who were in the program. So we had people that played football and were in the program. So people were able to still be out and about and be known, but still be a part of the program.
Do you think that actually, I'm not even going to ask that question because I want to learn what that transition was like. I mean, it sounds like you were like me and were affirmed once you got to Norfolk State, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're like, oh, I'm in the right place. The same thing
Mm-hmm.
you had when you know, were 14 and going through high school, but now you're in it, right? And you're
Mm-hmm.
a part of that community. You're a part of that student population, and you're part of the university system. Um, and yeah, what um, did you have anybody who was like a mentor when you were at Norfolk State, or maybe even
At the university or outside?
either one? But I was thinking more so at the universe. Yeah, actually, either one.
Well, I don't know if I had a mentor, but in the program, you had people who were a year ahead of you. I mean, again, we all stayed on the same floor, so
Right.
you had freshmen there, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. So you had people who had these internships, who had these research jobs, and so they were showing you the path to success.
Sure.
So you had it firsthand. You could walk down the hall and be like, "Hey, I got to take this organic chemistry class in 2 years. Oh, here's your book right here. I got the book. Here are all the exams. Here's everything. This professor is really good. You're going to like this. You're not going to like this. Make sure you do this." And so that kind of helped us, endure.
Yeah, I mean, that's so helpful. And I mean, I saw that within our, I don't want to compare the two because they're different areas of study, but there is a common theme there where it is expected. And this is where I think the experience on the Black college campus is maybe a little different than the predominantly white institutions.
Mm-hmm.
It's expected of you to be a mentor to someone. It's inherent. Like there is no like, oh, you don't help the next person out, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I'm being selfish. I mean, there are some people who are selfish, but I really didn't observe that, and that was one of
Mm-hmm.
the things that I talk about a lot when I share my experience at a historically Black college. Is just like the unwritten, like it's like, oh yeah, what do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like I've been in your place. Let me help you.
Mm-hmm.
That was me in the TV studio, right? Um, somebody showed me how to do this, and now it's my job to do the same for you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so you finish Norfolk State, and then you move on
Mm-hmm.
to that school
And,
that you're representing right now, which
oh
is
yeah, 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 yeah. I
uh,
just happen to be wearing this hat today. I love my Norfolk State. Let me first say that. Norfolk State, I love you. All HBCUs, I love you. I just happen to be wearing this hat today. Call me.
and
But yeah, I left Norfolk State and went on to Virginia Tech
okay.
and pursued a master's in entomology there.
Okay, so where is it that you where is it that you decided, hey, I'm going the entomology route? Was it before you graduated?
I actually graduated and didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew I wasn't moving back to Maryland. I was going to stay in Norfolk. And so I stayed in Norfolk and I worked at Uno's Chicago Pizzeria.
Really?
Yeah, as a waiter.
I think maybe I knew that.
Yeah, and I was working there, and then I found I was like, you know what? I can make some money as a substitute teacher. Let me apply for that. So
Okay.
I applied to be a substitute teacher, and they ended up seeing my application, and the city of Norfolk, the public school system, brought me in for an interview to be a teacher. And so, yeah, I ended up getting a teaching job.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I thought I was going to just be a substitute teacher. I was cool with that. I was going to work at Uno's, sub on the side, and make a little cash.
Right.
But actually ended up being a seventh grade science teacher at an alternative school, Madison Alternative School in
Madison
Norfolk.
School. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah.
to school that you went to, or is that a totally different
Oh no, my school was edgy, but Madison, I mean, it was an alternative school, so these students had been suspended and removed from their
Oh,
home school,
okay.
and so they were, yeah, it was kids from all over the place, and that was really eye opening in the sense of it wasn't about teaching. So I taught the subject matter, but it was more about character development and trying to reach the children in a different way. And so some of them, I mean, this is probably a shortcoming on my end. I had one kid say, "Hey, Mr. Allen, I can't make any money in here." And I was like, "Oh, okay, I understand. I'm leaving." I said, "No, you can't leave. At least just stay."
Sure.
Just stay in here. If you're in here, that means you're not out on the block. You're in here. I'm gonna try to teach you, but at the very least, involve yourself in the conversations
Sure.
and just be in this. It's safer in here than it is out there.
Hmm.
But that was a trying time, but I enjoyed it. But I applied to graduate school while I was teaching because it was fun, but it wasn't as intensive from a science standpoint as I wanted to go into. So I said, you know what, let me apply to grad school. And I was like, wait a minute, let me apply to the entomology programs. This is something that I like. Let me just see what's out there.
Sure.
And so, yeah, ended up getting into Virginia Tech and working with a really great woman by the name of Deanie Miller, who changed my life. And yeah, it was a great time.
And what? And how so? What'd she do?
Because she grew up in California. She had grown up in where she grew up. She grew up in LA? No, she grew up in San Diego.
Okay.
And she didn't go to college until she was like 28 years old.
Probably smart.
But hers wasn't just off of pure aptitude. It's because she lived a little bit. She was hanging out. Yeah.
Look, I know that. I think that
I know what you mean.
Follow this model that
Mm-hmm.
everyone is ready to go right into school, and if you don't do it, you will fail. Now, I understand that it can be tough if you're not in school, and you need some structure, and without it, then yes, you might be more susceptible to getting into trouble or living, as we like to call it. And I don't know if that's right. It isn't right for everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
I do think we have to start really kind of reevaluating what the education journey looks like, right? And that requires us to look at the curriculum and the relationship between teachers and students, because, like you mentioned before, right? Like you weren't those kids at the alternative school weren't really teaching them that much about science. It was more so like life skills and almost, I don't know, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you wanted them to kind of like fall in love with learning, right? Like I just want you to get in here so you understand what learning is, and it's not bad. It might be uncomfortable, but I want you to explore them. I mean, those are my
and more so than that, just more so striving to be better people. And the idea of a good person, yeah, that's up to you. Don't necessarily have to fall within my idea of what a good person is, but being able to take care of yourself without having to put your life in danger. That's more so what it was about. Like, hey, how can we communicate with one another, without being angry?
Sure.
And if we are angry, how do you channel that anger and not let it be violent? You know what I mean? Or just dealing with people and interacting and communicating and really seeing the greater good out there. Everyone isn't out to get you. There are a lot of people in your community that may be out to get you. But in this space, I'm not here to be that. I'm not here to be the opposition. I'm here to help you get to where you want to be, whatever that may be. And it may not be through just learning about plant biology.
So where did you develop that that approach to teaching? Because that's not, I don't know if that's necessarily the standard of education or teachers. There historically been this kind of us versus them, right? And like, hey, we are a collective, and we're working together to better everyone in the classroom, including the teacher, right? Because the teacher is learning as well. Yeah. So where'd you get that from?
I learned it on the fly. I remember one day, because I came in there, I talked to the principal and they told me your job is to do this, but they had a very rigid way of thinking. They were like, pretty much they were done with the kids. This is their last resort. We're just herding cats here.
Yep.
We're just putting them in a room, and your job is to manage it for 50 minutes until that next bell rings. Yeah. Teach some stuff too to get some of them back, but you're really just a placeholder here. But I had a student, and I forget his name, and we had these little laptops, and I would bring the laptops out and allow them to use the laptop. And one day he took it and he raised it above his head and he looked at me and he acted like he was going to slam it.
Mhm.
And I was like, I'm not doing something right.
Yeah.
Because I was sounding like, hi, I'm Mr. Allen. And they didn't respond to that.
No.
And so then after that, I started wearing like, I'm an avid footwear fanatic. And so I started wearing like my sneakers a little bit more. And I started like teaching more outside and just trying these different things, doing a few more experiments, not just book learning, just to try to reach them in a different way. And I think it was through that.
When you said outside, you mean like physically outside?
Outside in the outside, yes, outside the classroom,
No, no.
you
Look,
know. Yeah.
I'm right there with you. I mean, in my approach to alternative methods of teaching. I forgot what Nordic country it is. I don't know if it's Holland or the Netherlands, but there's research out that about some of the classes, the walking classes that they do, well,
Mhm.
while learning, and I'm a huge walker, and I listen to podcasts, and when I need to be creative, I walk, and it's
Mhm.
something like there's something there, especially if you're walking in nature, right? I mean, there's a connection there, and you're getting the stimuli that you need in order to like really critically think and like apply
Mhm.
whatever you're learning. So, uh, yeah, I think that's great, and I'm sure at that time was it early 2000s,
It's like 2006.
2006? Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so I'm thinking that's kind of maybe I don't know was that a little out of the box for
Oh yeah, for the school, 100%. What are you doing, Miss Allen? Why are you taking them outside? Well, today we're learning about plants, and we can go out there and look at the divination of these plants, and have the children actually touch the plants and talk and discuss them. And yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
so part of it was just breaking up the monotony, but the other aspect was try to provide some different levels of stimuli, like you're suggesting or saying.
so you you leave the alternative school, you get into Virginia Tech, which is
Mm-hmm.
Blacksburg, Virginia. And yeah, okay, so you're walking into a totally university system, a totally different, same state, just a different environment. You're in the what are you in the mountains? You went
Mm-hmm.
you went from the coast of Virginia to the mountains. The only reason I know that is because my dad is from Roanoke, which is
Mm-hmm.
from Blacksburg. And I also had the opportunity to visit you while you were in school to
Mm-hmm.
observe a different to observe Virginia Tech because I didn't know a thing about it. I think the only thing I knew about Virginia Tech maybe was obviously football, and for whatever reason I knew that there was like an ROTC, there was like a strong ROTC
Yeah. Yeah.
at Virginia Tech, and that's really about it. So yeah, talk to me about that transition from historically black college, moving on from teaching and then going to Virginia Tech. Yeah.
It was. It was. It was an eye opener. For two different reasons. One reason was the obvious that, you know, I'm a black kid from Norfolk, went to a historically black college, and here I am in an entomology master's program with all of these students from all over the place. Liberal arts schools, some from Virginia Tech, some from Oberlin College, some from all of these institutions where you think people have a high aptitude. And so here I am. I didn't think I belonged there
Mhm.
because some of the experiences they had growing up prepared them for graduate school, whether that be, my insect collecting. I still was knowledgeable of some insects, but I didn't take the time in college or in high school to nurture it completely. I did some reading, but I
Sure.
didn't nurture it to the way that some people, if you grew up in a rural area and all you do in the summertime is walk around and you're not in the city, you have an experience that I do not have. And a lot of those students had that experience, or their parents were scientists.
Mm-hmm.
But just being in a classroom and just really feeling out of place.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, my cousin was an undergraduate student at Virginia Tech.
Okay.
And he helped me tremendously because he showed me that there were Black and brown people at this university.
Yeah.
And there was another culture.
Okay.
So I kind of had the best of both worlds in the end of it, where I got to experience what was going on through my program and getting involved in graduate school, but also having this tie to the Black community.
Sure. And so where does that, I mean, I'm in my master's program now, and again, not exactly the same, but I do think that there is a level of focus that you need to be in
Mm-hmm.
graduate studies. And yeah, I mean, I'm at San Francisco State, which is very much a commuter school, right? Where I don't live on the campus, and it's not. I
Mm-hmm.
live in San Francisco, where you know, it's not a college town, right? And there's
Mm-hmm.
there's so many things going on within the city, and I don't necessarily have a ton of time to participate in the other facets of the university, right? W- did you kind of, were you pretty focused? You were like, I don't know, kind of in your own world, or were you able to be like
Mm-hmm.
social? Yeah, how does
No,
that?
I did it all. I did it all because it was a new experience. And I was like, you know what, if I'm going to be here, I might as well try my hand at all of it.
Everything,
So I got involved in government things. I got involved heavily in the Entomology Society, where we had fundraisers and all that kind of stuff. But, I just got involved and entrenched because I had to just break out. If I would have held myself just to that academic, I'm just here for school, I'm here for school, I wouldn't have learned how to navigate different spaces
Yep.
and how to go from the classroom and then go talk to a farmer about ants. Or if there was an opportunity, I just wanted to take advantage of it, not just because I know it would help me, but because part of it was just fun. Like, the worst I can do is fail here. So let me just see what happens. If they said, hey, we're going to do this today, do we need volunteers? All right, I'll do it. Do you know what it is? No, but we'll just go check it out and see. Either I'm going to like it or I'm going to dislike it. And that's really what it was.
I mean, you're saying something that's very hard. I mean, you were willing to, not willing, you had the confidence to fail, right? Most folks do not want to fail, right? It's not something that we encourage. It's not something we encourage, period, across all lines, right? We're not saying like, oh, I'm gonna fail. You know what I mean? Like, even though it's inevitable, you are going to fail many times throughout life, and specifically on college campus. I think that the idea is it's unobtainable perfection. Like, we don't talk about that within. Like, we continue to talk about various themes in education. We don't talk about, hey man, it's fine that you fail. Like, you're going to do it. It's not about the failing. It's what did you learn from failing.
It's the learning.
Yeah, that's where the learning comes. You know what I mean? Like, you have to get to that point. I'm dealing with that right now. I mean, I still struggle with that now, where I'm working with one of my professors on the group therapy project, and I'm a competitive person and a healthy competitive person. But I had to forget, like, I almost forgot in kind of planning for one of our groups and workshops, that she's been doing this for 15 years. There was a sense of inadequacy that I was just like, man, like, what? Yeah, why am I not on it like she is? I'm like, well, you're just. It's not that I don't know anything, but it's I'm learning. Like, this is a new experience for me, and that is difficult. It's been very difficult to as I say, the eternal freshman, right? I think I heard someone, I can't remember who did it, but who said it, but you graduate 8th grade, you're a freshman in high school. You graduate high school, you're a freshman. You graduate from college, you're a first grad student, or your first year on the job. First year med student, first year PhD, whatever it may be, you're always going to be someone who's in like in the beginning stages of something. So don't look at it as like you don't know anything, or it's just, this is part of the learning process.
Some of it's, what we're talking about, you're talking about the pathways through colleges and things like that. It's not linear for everyone. And none of this is linear. You think of, I'm going to do this when I'm 16. I'm going to do this when I'm 20. By 30, I'm going to have this. And life seldom operates with point A, B, C, D, E, and F in line.
No.
It goes all over the place, and being comfortable with that is the scary part. But like you said, that is where you really gain growth and knowledge and wisdom, by going through the difficult things.
Sure. So yeah, you participated in, and how did that work out within? Because you're navigating quite a few identities. You're Hamilton, the grad student. You're Hamilton, the guy who's getting used to Virginia Tech. You're
Mm-hmm.
you're going through your own development, right? You're working through who you are as a person. Um, I would have to bring it up because you are on a predominantly white campus, and you not only are one of the, actually, yeah, you're probably one of the few students, and then you're a black male. And we mentioned earlier that Virginia Tech is a huge sports school, and I wonder yeah, I mean, I know you as a person who is able to walk into just about any environment and feel comfortable, right?
Mm-hmm.
So did you ever feel like, oh, like, did you ever get the sense of like, oh yeah, like I'm in this lane, or people are treating you like I'm in a lane and then there's another lane for those other black people?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely heard, well, you're different. You know what I mean? Like, no, I'm not different.
I'm really not.
Yeah, and what do you mean by that? You know, that's your stereotype.
Sure.
You know, yeah, you know, yeah. Did I like hip hop? Yeah. Did I play dumb about it sometimes? Yeah. That wasn't the best thing. Putting your true self to the side for someone else to be able to accept you is never a good thing, because you're lying. You're lying to yourself. But I definitely did that. You know, that Franz Fanon book, I think that's his name. You know, Black Skin, White Mask, where you put on this mask to be this other person. So I definitely dealt with that and trying to be something that I wasn't sometimes.
Sure.
Because I just didn't know. I didn't know how to be. Unapologetically Black wasn't a term back then. You know, I was that at sometimes, but sometimes I felt like I had to mute myself in order to be accepted.
Did you feel like, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I think one of the things that we can normalize going to a historically black college is we don't have to worry about being black. It's not something you think about, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where, you know, I could see I don't see it with you. I just think that you are you. I think you are an independent person, and your personality it doesn't necessarily cling to a black identity.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, you know, I see you as like an authentic person. Like, yeah, I am who I am, you know. And I wonder, was that, you know, was that, you know, something that you really worked on? You can go back and think about it. Like, was that something that you kind of, I don't know, did you struggle with that? Because I don't know what that was like during your initial phase of, like, you know, transferring from Norfolk State to Virginia Tech.
Yeah, I mean, because I mean, I don't think what is culturally speaking, yes, you can have like a black identity, you know.
Sure.
There are some things that we do, you know, from a food standpoint, or way of dress, a way of speak, that it can be directly associated with black people and brown people. I don't know, I don't want to get too confused here, but like I said earlier, I did go through points where I did try to hide that. And then there were other times when I wore it on my shoulder.
Sure.
But that was really just trying to come to grips with, how do I do this? How is it that I'm always the only person? So what do I do when I'm the only person? I'm always the only person. I'm always that guy. I'm a black dude that studies insects.
Right.
How do you manage it? And do you manage it by quieting down and slumping down in your chair, sitting in the back and not talking? Or do you just say, look, I'm Hamilton. I'm here. Yeah, I got on Jordans, but I know all about these ants today. And you're going to take this information and I'm just going to give it to you. And sometimes, you know, I had experiences where it wasn't so accepted, but you got to keep riding. I don't know if I answered your question though, but
Yeah, no, by your classmate. No, I'm just. I think I'm also getting at, you know,
Less classmates
I,
and less professors, more so people that were at the trainings and around it.
gotcha.
Because I mean, with luckily for me, the people that I dealt with, they were really, really accepting. And my advisor made sure that I was comfortable. I mean, this is what I tell you. I said, she changed my life, but she always made an effort to. She wasn't some savior or anything by that, but she recognized that I had a different background, and she didn't shy away from asking me questions about my culture or, showing me who she was. She never hid that. She didn't water it down. She wasn't some apologist. She was who she was,
Sure.
and that allowed me to be who I was.
Yeah. So what I was asking you before, you did answer it. But maybe I'll be a little bit more clear. I think what I was trying to get at was I have this feeling, and that's why I'm going to ask you. I have this feeling that you walked in with a level of confidence, and you walked in understanding I'm I'm a great student. I'm a good person.
Mm-hmm.
You never had to think about back on a historic college campus. So I'm wondering, was it you? Was it the environment? Was it, or I also could imagine that maybe there were some black folks on the campus where maybe you had to like decide, like, oh, do I hang out with y'all or do I hang out with other people?
Mm-hmm.
Is it the environment that required you to like self-identify as like, oh yeah, I guess I am the only one, or I guess I am black in this place?
I mean, it's hard not to.
Yeah.
I mean, again, you walk into it, you know it immediately.
Yeah.
You're at this campus. Unfortunately, we have the burden, and this is if you have, this is where you're a black or brown person. This is if you're a woman walking into an all,
Right.
room full of men,
Mhm.
or classic men, or if you're a man walking into a room with all women, or anything like that.
Mhm.
You recognize immediately, but you know that burden of being like a black dude. Sometimes, yeah, I walk with that burden. I don't know if I was confident always, but I knew that I couldn't allow them in my own mind to push me out. I had to endure it to get to where I wanted to get to. And I didn't have to make a choice between who I hung out with, but that was more about academic success.
Okay.
I knew that if I wanted to be a really good entomologist, I needed to hang out with the entomologists
Right.
because they lived it and slept it. They did things that I just didn't like. I saw a guy once, I had on these brand new Nikes, and we were out at this creek, and he jumped in the creek till you can lift up rocks and find insects. And he jumped in there with his shoes on. I said, "Oh heck no, player, not me. That is not going down." But I took my shoes off and I said, I'm just gonna get in this creek. I'm not gonna wear my shoes in the water, but I have to jump into this creek
Yeah,
because there's something beneficial here. And
absolutely.
that's kind of the attitude that I took. Like, hey, it may not feel good to me, but I know that if I try it out, I'll get something out of it. And if I don't like it, then I don't like it. But I have to at least try. At the very least, I got to give an effort.
Yeah, I mean that's why you were there. I mean, shit. Like the whole point is to go experience something new, and I
Mm-hmm.
would say that there's something, you know, really there's something really cool about diving in so deep into whatever field of study that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
One of I think I've been, yeah, I mean, education seems to be the real thing of what we're talking about today. And one of the things that is driving me towards going back to teach is I'm seeing a lack of curiosity within education, and that's even at the graduate level. I We've gotten to this place where people are getting degrees for letters and not to satisfy
Mm-hmm.
their curiosities about the subjects, right? It's not to, almost go into like states of psychosis because you're trying to learn so much.
Mm-hmm.
And that part has been challenging, but it's also been very rewarding. It's been
Mm-hmm.
it's been such a weird kind of fulfilling journey to just live and breathe, understanding people and understanding
Mm-hmm.
various systems at work, and that part has been it. Like I said, I can't speak highly enough about it, but I've also seen a large amount of people that aren't having that experience.
Mm-hmm.
They're just there to take in what's being given to them and regurgitate the information back. And
It's a means to an end.
yeah,
It is here. I'm here to get my job.
right.
You
And
know, I'm here to get my job.
and that can sound kind of selfish in a way, because maybe that's what that's what you're here for, right? But I really value um curiosity, and people who just are like exploring. I really value
Mm-hmm.
people, and it's so weird because I think we, just like you were saying, unapologetically black being kind of like a, a nuanced thing. I think, what's the other one? Thinkers. We need more thinkers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
agree. I think we do. Like what I see is just kind of monotonous. So let me
And
see.
so what I was gonna say is like, it's thinking critically, and that is a skill that isn't taught as much, in school. And that's, kind of when I was teaching, why I would take students outside, I'm like, all right, this isn't just circling in A or B.
Yeah,
We can ask questions like, why do you think this plant is green? Not
sure.
just, hey, I can say which plants are green, this one, and this one. That's one thing, but thinking about why those plants are green
Yeah.
are a deeper level of thinking
Are
and
these plants,
understanding about,
is it not
yeah,
blue, purple, green, and a multitude of colors? Like why?
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like yeah, we and that needs to start earlier on. I mean, I've had conversations with educators, um, as early as pre-K, and I had the opportunity to work with pre-K students, primarily Black pre-K students, and really work on developing curiosity and looking
Mhm.
at education early on, just to kind of see like where are we, you know what I mean?
It's
Um,
actually a cool TED talk. I forget the guy's name, but he taught. His talk was specifically thinking about or discussing that critical thinking component and how to create questions and curricula that stimulate that aspect of the brain.
yeah,
Because being able to solve problems, that's essentially what we're all trying to do, is solve a problem. Even at work, you're trying to solve a problem. And there are some jobs that are more mundane than others, but if you're able to think about, even if it's a mundane job, there's a way to do things more efficiently,
sure.
at a cheaper cost or more environmentally sound or whatever it may be, and if you can think critically about that and think about the why and the how and the reasons behind the function, you can get really, really far.
And then I would add on to that we need to um, really need to look at creativity as a source of freedom, right? I think
Mhm.
when you're in your most creative state of mind, it's when you feel the most free from everything else going around. You're like, oh, okay, exactly, like problem, and that's why problem solving is so important. If you're
Mhm.
trying to solve a problem, then you're not concerned about whatever mundane, whatever else is going
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I got you.
on. List the list of things that we all are dealing with, right? And yeah, I think there's something there, and yeah. So nonetheless, I went on my rant there, but I'm very passionate about uh, getting students and people in general to explore their creativity and their
Mhm.
critical thinking
Mhm.
abilities. So okay, so you're at Tech. You through Tech. Was there any points that were harder than others? The beginning of
Yeah. The hardest part was when I drove down to Norfolk to do some research one weekend,
Yep.
and I actually went down there and I went on a date with a young lady, and we went to my old stomping grounds, Uno's Chicago Pizzeria. And while inside dining on the finest pizza known to man, and that great thing they have called a chicken spinacoli, it's a chicken breast stuffed with cheese and broccoli. We're having this, and we finish up, go outside, and someone had broken into my research vehicle and they stole all of my material. They took my laptop, and in my laptop bag, I also had my flash drive. And at this time, flash drives were not sweet, where you had a terabyte of data on one. And it was like 16 gigs of information that they took from me, and that derailed everything because we weren't using cloud-based systems or anything like that. Everything was on my hard drive or on my flash drive. So I had to recreate my entire study. And, luckily my advisor didn't fire me. She did make me pay for my schooling for a semester out of my own pocket because I was going to school for free. She made me pay just for being negligent and not saving things on the drive that we had in the office.
Oh, damn.
But I had to recreate my study, and yeah, it was a rough time. But it just taught me persistence, and and to think about things. Don't be moving so fast. I was so concerned with getting down there on that date. I hadn't seen her in years.
Was it
It was
good?
a big deal.
Was it good?
Oh, it's a fantastic date.
Fantastic.
It was a fantastic date. It was a great time. Great time. But, I was a little negligent.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot negligent. I think I locked the vehicle, but I definitely should have had my computer with me, or I should have put the computer in the place where I was staying and not have it with me. Or I didn't need to have the hard drive and flash drive and the backup flash drive all in the same location. That's just silly.
It's so interesting because this is something that people probably don't really recognize as a problem anymore just because there are cloud-based services. And yeah, man, that is, that's a good reminder of how
I felt like somebody in like one of those, what's my guy's name? Mission Impossible. I lost the chip. Hey, he lost the chip. And I lost the chip, man.
So, all right. So, what was that the first or second year?
That was my second year. I was about to wrap up.
Okay.
And so I had to stay an additional year and a half.
An additional year and a half?
Yeah.
Oh, my.
And it actually ended up being 4 years in total because I could have left, but my advisor was still paying me and we worked some things out.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really long because someone came in and took my goods.
What was your area? What was your area? I know you're
studying
entomology, but what were you studying?
It's urban entomology, so ants, bed bugs, and cockroaches, and all those things. Anything that can be considered a general household pest. Again, those ants, bed bugs, cockroaches, sometimes mosquitoes, all those kinds of things. Mosquitoes can be also public health, but we're more so concerned with them from just a control and management standpoint, not really digging into the disease aspect, but more so how do we do abatement and control populations and communities. But I was studying fire ants.
Oh, okay. So you did. Oh, okay. So you did bring that.
Yeah.
That childhood dream.
I was the first person to study fire ants in Virginia.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you have your name on a plaque somewhere for that?
A chain with it says #1 fire ant man in Virginia. It's iced out, but no, it's more just a few papers here and there.
Sure. So so that makes you an expert in fire ants in the state of Virginia. I'm sure. So let me ask you, we were talking about bees earlier, and you were talking about you're talking about bees, and then actually fire ants. Let's use fire ants for this one. You were talking about the pheromones being sent out when there is any type of threat posed to the queen, right?
Or just to the colony.
Or to the colony.
To the colony, but the idea of the colony is always about the queen. So yeah, you're right.
Multiple queens in some cases, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's made me think, what in other species are there things that you see that human beings could model in terms of like social structures? Are there things that we could do that, like, hey, you know what, these other species of or insects are doing this really well, maybe we should try to, or maybe are there things that we do model our social structures from?
Yeah, I mean, there is always your maternal and your paternal structure. That's always going to be present. But
How-
with ants,
okay.
ants have highly communicative like societies, but there is a drawback to them. You know what I mean? There is a drawback because if you're doing all of the work for the queen, you're not doing anything for yourself.
Yeah,
You're
absolutely.
really just trying to, but you're not even worried about the queen. Yeah, so there is a level of altruism. You're really more so concerned about your sisters. So
Mhm.
all of the ants in the colony, the worker ants, are sterile females for the most part.
Hmm.
Male ants have one purpose, and that is to reproduce. So as soon as a male ant reproduces with the queen ant, and the queen is different from a worker, as soon as the male and queen reproduce, the male dies. He's done.
Like,
He's just there to pass genetic material.
hmm, interesting. Yeah, I don't know how that worked out right now.
Yeah, yeah, that ain't the coolest. Hey, let's have a date. I died. I had a good
Oh,
date though.
so you're saying like on the spot, like you finished.
And within minutes, maybe in a few hours or so, but his job is to reproduce. Once he has done that, he has done the crowning achievement for a male ant.
Interesting. What about
Yeah, yeah.
any other insects where you see like maybe some very kind of unique social structures?
Well, so you only get true like socialism in certain insects, and it's primarily, your wasps, your bees, your ants, and your termites.
When you say
Those are your truly.
white people, dude.
You said what?
When you say wasps, you're not talking about white people, are you?
No, no, I'm talking about wasps, actual winged individuals. But yeah, where they have truly social structures. Other insects are kind of just, they may reproduce, they may, the female may protect the young for a certain amount of time, but they're largely on their own. They don't have a nice colony.
Mm-hmm.
But with your ants, your bees, your wasps, and your termites, you see these colonies.
Got you. Hmm.
Yeah.
Oh,
But we can, do some cool things by, you can take ant processes and you can use those for computer modeling and things like that. You could look at, flow and transfer and task allocation in ants. So how can this society work better if we have, you can have a certain group of ants that do this particular job, and this group does this job, and this group does this job, depending upon what the colony needs. And I think we could utilize some of that to be more, we're not going to be truly altruistic, but we could have more resource sharing and things like that and not always be out for the individual. But it's kind of hard. Humans are really selfish. I read a book a long time ago called The Selfish Gene, and humans are largely selfish. A lot of organisms are selfish. We're always going to be trying to reproduce our own and push our own genetic material out there to be successful.
or
So I don't know.
yeah, no. I mean, I just was curious about it. All right, so you finish up a long time,
Oh man, a long one.
a long, a long time, and I think I was like, it's interesting that we're talking about that because I do remember you being in at Tech for a while, and I was trying to figure out, I was like, what are you still doing at Tech? Like, I mean, I didn't again, not that I knew a ton about entomology or really a ton about the graduate program. So for all I knew, I was like, oh, maybe it takes this long. You know what I mean?
Oh no.
But okay, so you finish your time in Blacksburg, and what's next?
I leave Blacksburg and then I go on to Clemson for the PhD.
Clemson University in
Yeah.
South
In
Carolina,
Clemson, South Carolina.
right? Why
And
Clemson?
well, I was thinking about going to the University of Florida, but I didn't want to move to Florida. And I knew of two researchers at Clemson, and they were fairly well known and they had a good program. And I was like, you know what? Let me go check them out. I went to visit them. I also looked at LSU, but I went to Clemson on a visit and liked it a lot and said, you know what? I can deal with this. I can come back to South Carolina. But boy, now Virginia Tech was different.
Okay.
Just from me going from an HBC to a predominantly, white institution.
Mhm.
But going to Clemson, oh man, football was big at Virginia Tech, but football was king
God.
at Clemson. And then, historically, if you think about Clemson, Clemson was founded by a guy named Thomas Green Clemson, whose father-in-law is John C. Calhoun. John C. Calhoun wrote the letter to the White House that stated that South Carolina was going to secede from the Union. So here we are at the epicenter of all of these things. There's an institute on Clemson's campus, the Strom Thurmond Institute. We all know Strom Thurmond. He was a staunch political guy who was not in favor of desegregation. He was a strong segregationist. But you had all of these historical figures here that were around the university, and a very traditional university.
Sure.
And so, quite xenophobic university at the time.
Yeah. It's just fascinating that you're talking about that now, as we see, kind of countless monuments and statues being torn down.
Happened at Clemson too. There's a hall there, known as Tillman Hall, named after Ben Tillman, and he's also known as Pitchfork Ben Tillman. And he was not a positive guy. But when I was there, students were trying to change the name of that hall because of the racist tones and the things that he had done in the past. They were trying to change the name back into his old name, which was Old Main. And at that time, there had been sit-ins, and people were hanging out at the president's office day in and day out, just sitting in and trying to get their voices heard. And the university didn't want to do anything with it. But as of late, the Board of Trustees did vote to change it to Old Main and remove the name of Ben Tillman.
It did.
Yeah.
I see a lot of that with programs and institutions that historically weren't willing to budge. But I think about, just the future of higher academics. We're going to go through a real interesting time now that, majority of schools are virtual, doing virtual learning. And you're going to have to sell students to come back, right? And now we're talking, as you mentioned, which sounds really funny that you were seeking out Florida, which is in Gainesville, LSU, huge SEC school.
It's just the nature of the programs.
Yeah.
So the Southeast is warm. Insects are there's a lot of agriculture, so it lends itself to it. Yeah.
As we, I don't see any sports, especially if we're talking about football. I don't know when that's coming back.
Listen, they're going to play some football. They're going to play.
At some point they will. I don't know. I don't know when. I'm not sure how soon that's going to be. Yes, eventually there will be. But it'll be interesting to see what happens to universities who lose out on those students that were coming because, well, this is part of the social environment, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Schools are known. I would say schools are known first and foremost for their.
That's it.
Yeah, like.
I just think overall we're at a unique time where the landscape as we know it, for business, for education, for social structures. Even the fact that we're doing this is, instead of meeting in person, it's going to be difficult for me to get to California, but meeting via Zoom, this is the norm. All of my meetings today were on Zoom. And I just think that we have to utilize technology and not be so averse to change and realize that, hey, we can still be effective. We can still do things. It's just going to look a little bit different, and you have to be willing to engage. It can't be fearful of the past.
No, not at all. Yeah, it's gonna take some time. I'm confident that we will. It will be fascinating to see, what comes out of it. There's going to be a ton of work within education reform, and I think that means that there's opportunity for creative people to come up with programs and implement their ideas. So either way. So Clemson. What? Yeah. So a PhD in entomology.
Mm-hmm.
What? Why the PhD? Why didn't you just stop at the graduate level?
Because I'm already here, and I want to, if I'm going to do this, I want to go as far as possible. And, the masters is kind of guided. They guide you along the way. They're helping you a lot. I came up with a lot of, I don't know, I played a good role in creating my research project. But at the PhD level, I am going out here, I am making observations, and I'm coming up with questions to try to figure out why a particular process is taking place. I'm setting up experiments to either prove that idea or debunk that idea. The whole goal is to debunk the idea. And if you just so happen to stumble upon a positive, then you did a great job, or kudos to you. And so I just wanted to try my hand at the upper level of academic pursuits.
Majority of your class from Tech pursue their PhDs?
No, it's a mixed bag. Yeah. Some people are fine with just a master's, and that's all well and good. But for me, I wanted to design a project and really get involved in the understanding of organismal behavior, and ants in particular.
Interesting. And how long does the PhD open up more doors than the graduate degree?
Yeah, to a degree, it can, but it can also remove you from some positions. Because people would think that, if you got a PhD, why would you want to do this job? It's not going to be research. And so I've dealt with that even, when I first started out in my position. And so right now I'm a technical director for a pest control company. So someone would say, why did you go into academia? Well, I didn't really want to be a teacher. I still get to teach individuals about organisms, but it's more so about controlling them with business in the back of your mind. But for some, they would think that, well, this job isn't going to be in a lab, so why would you want it? We're not going to hire you because you're not going to be satisfied with this position.
Wow. Yeah, this is, it's interesting to hear what employers have told you is almost like hindering you, like, why would you do this? I mean, you got a PhD. That's fascinating. And so this was more of like a personal, seemed like a personal goal for you.
It was a personal thing. I really wanted to get it. I wanted to be called doctor. And I'm like, I'm here. I've gone this far, and I'm one step away to being called doctor and being at the height of an academic pursuit in the degree sense. Because you don't need a degree to confirm your knowledge or your curiosity or anything like that. But for me, I wanted that degree. It meant something to me.
So where does that play out in your social circles? Was that hard for you did you have to take a break from your social circles? Did your social circles change?
I probably should have taken more breaks, but I worked it out because being social and communicating and being around people is just part of my makeup, and I need that to thrive. So if you put me in a situation where I can't be around, I gain energy from that. I'm no closeted individual. I like to be amongst, and I think I am my best when I'm around people and I can learn from them and with them. And so there were times when I probably should have been less social, but in the same sense, I probably would do it really, really similar if I had a chance to do it again.
Yeah, I'm struggling with that right now. I'm for sure the model extrovert. I require, like, really, really thrive when there's people around, which is why virtual learning is going to be a very, very real challenge. But I was wondering about the social aspect, just because I think you explore your PhD similarly to, almost not. I don't want to say you could alienate yourself, but I think that you can get self-focused on the goal of getting the PhD. That not everyone's getting very few people are getting a PhD, and that could naturally start to cause you to get and have new friends and have different types of conversations. I only say that, and I say that because I'm experiencing that now, where you are so focused. I am so focused on my particular field of study that it really does dominate so much of my time that it's hard to break away from that. I've done it.
Hmm.
It's hard. It really is hard. And I could see where something as specific as entomology, you're like, I can't talk about this with everyone.
Hmm.
So
Well, your true relationships will survive. Those individuals will understand what you have to do. And you have a goal, so you do need to focus on that goal. And those conversations that you do have, they're beneficial to where you're going.
sure,
And having that myopic view sometimes is good for us. It is hyper focused because you need to be hyper focused in order to succeed.
absolutely.
And in order to think about these things beyond the surface level, it does require that extra effort, that extra, that freeze, that creative thinking. You can't be thinking about the mundane or something that's trivial when you have a large complex problem that you're trying to solve. So I would say, focus on, and then those relationships that you need to have that are vital for you, they'll be fine. You
Sure.
know, yeah, don't change who you are for it, but you know, some of the transitions and changes that you're making are beneficial and a part of the process.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the harder things to navigate is as someone who, values relationships, is that yeah, think they're going to change. Um,
Hmm.
and that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? That's
Hmm.
part of life. And I'm glad you articulated that the relationships that are strong and meaningful uh, will they'll withstand that test of time and stood the test of time for you while you were in South Carolina. So you didn't feel did I mean did you feel like you were isolated in any way when you were in your PhD program?
No, not so much. But as a as a student amongst the population, yes.
Okay,
In my program, no.
right.
But amongst the general population, yeah. And I still had relationships out. I was still involved at a very high level. But man, it's South Carolina.
Yeah, that's why I was. I mean,
You know, I I wasn't used to seeing, Confederate flags anymore. I wasn't used to this idea of the redneck individual. And I have a very bad, I associate, Southern living sometimes with negative stereotypes.
we
But
all.
there are some really, really good people
Yeah,
that are country. I grew up in the country. I was barefoot and snot nosed and making mud pies. You know what I mean?
yeah,
But when it came to like the opposite race, sometimes the idea of the Southern person, it made me feel really, really negative. And I had some experiences there where they weren't too favorable.
yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. But overall, I valued the experience because it did cause me. I didn't just, it's not like you go to Clemson, they just tell you all the history about all the things that took place in the creation of it. You got to search those things out.
Mhm.
And luckily, I was around some people who were, inquisitive and wanted to know how this place got started and what role did it play in the true South or the old South. And I think that was beneficial to me understanding where I came from because I grew up in South Carolina, but I didn't know anything about it, really. I
Yeah,
knew some things, but this was really important for me to learn more about where I came from,
yeah, 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 yeah.
where I grew up. Let me say that, not where I came from, where I grew up.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I mean, just made you a far more educated person and definitely a more well-rounded person. And that's probably the experience that I would that is even more unique. I mean, on top of you being a PhD student, you learning about the foundations of the country, right? And
Mhm.
that's huge. Right? I mean, I'm not doing it right now. I'm learning a little bit. I mean, I did learn a little bit about, like in the 70s, there was a student walkout that was led by the dean of ethnic studies, currently at San Francisco State. And that, I mean, again, those are things that I just picked up,
Mhm.
being a little inquisitive, and then also that being kind of a relevant conversation, right? That is something that was highlighted. If you go in the student center, there's a writing about her,
Mhm.
and just thinking about you know uh, how crazy that is. I don't think people really understand what that looks like for an entire university walk out. Obviously there were some students who didn't walk
Mhm. Nah, not us, fam.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. But nah, we're not. We gotta get this. We gotta get this work, and we don't really know what
Mhm.
you're walking out about. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
But that's part of the history, right? That's a part of the history of the city. That's a part of the history of San Francisco State, and it being a very um, prominent university when we talk about activism. You know what I mean? The history of
Mhm.
activism. So I think that's dope that you had that opportunity, and I agree with you when you're talking about that stereotype of white or just Southern living. Period. Right? There is such a ugly history. There is a very
Mhm.
that we should address and recognize, and that is part of us moving forward. I
Mhm.
talked about this on the podcast before that I was reading. No, I wasn't reading. I watched. I forgot what award he was receiving, but Nelson Mandela received an award. I forgot from what university. But he talked about one of the key pieces to South Africa moving forward was to implement education, not only Black students but white South African kids about what happened in that country. And
Mhm.
before that, but like until that they were in a learning environment that um, taught taught them the history, they could never move forward. And I think that's something that we don't do. I know we don't do that in the country, and I think that's what's hindering us from moving forward. And
And
hopefully, from everything going on right now, hopefully this is something that alters our trajectory. You know,
mhm.
but specifically with a PhD program, I think we naturally look like, oh, PhD, head in a book, head in research, head here,
But
and
see, I look at it a little differently. This is the only time in your life really when you're allowed to just think.
yeah,
When you're on a job, you're trying to get this degree, so there's a terminal point, but you just have the freedom to just go out there and observe and make connections.
yeah,
I don't have that freedom as much as I did in graduate school, nowhere near as much.
no,
So
yeah,
open it up and go for it. You know what I mean? You can literally do whatever you want to right now. You want this opportunity, unless you go into academia, but even still, there
yeah,
are check marks and things that you have to tick marks you have to get to. But ultimately, as a graduate student, you have the opportunity to think and be expected to be a thinker. And
that's what's driving me towards pursuing my PhD. Is I want to feel that similarly to you, that I've reached the top. I've gotten to that place, and not necessarily just to the top. I take that back. It's not the top because you're constantly
it never stops. Yeah.
never stops, right? It's a practice. Like learning is a practice. You constantly have to do it. But I do. That's how I feel, and I'm not finished with grad school. Like we've done in a year, but I already know. Like I already have that feeling. Like
Mhm.
PhD. I'm gonna go get it.
Yeah. And some people don't need to do it to be the free thinkers. I don't know if I needed it, but it definitely helped me see beyond my general scope.
Sure.
There's some people that are way more enlightened than me that, the originators of all of this, there wasn't any degree. They were just naturally inquisitive. I wasn't. I was inquisitive to a point, but needed this program to help bring some aspects of my personality out and thought process that I just didn't see for myself.
Sure. Are there any um are there any uh Black entomologist like organizations? Or is it
Yeah,
just there are?
yeah. There's the aptly named Black Entomologist Society.
Are you the president?
No, 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 no. I was involved when I was in graduate school. I'm not too involved now, but you know, I don't. That's the only one that I'm familiar with. But I mean, I participate in something called the National Pest Management Association, and we have a diversity council, and I was just president of that. And my aim as chair was really to just, it's really business oriented, but my aim was to reach back out to universities and to students and to show them, what this industry has to offer.
Sure.
Because I didn't really know, someone took it upon me, it was my advisor, but she put me into this program called Manners, which is the Minorities in Agricultural, Natural Resources, and Associated Sciences, something. And yeah, I forget the acronym, but it's Manners, Mannrs.
Yeah.
Natural Resources.
That is a long.
Natural Resource, yeah, and Sciences. And through that program, I was around other students who weren't just entomologists, but other Black and brown students who were taking advantage of the natural resources, whether it be forestry, whether it be agriculture, whether it be herpetology, whatever it may be, just these natural, sciences. And I wanted to reach back out to those programs and usher those students and bring them into my industry. But I think whatever level you go to, kind of roundabout, it is our responsibility to reach back out and try to pull individuals up. That's one of our charges as people. In order to progress as a community, it is our responsibility as the stewards of it to try to reach back and pull those ahead, because representation matters. And if I can help, just one or two or half of one, even if they don't even choose entomology, if they can say that, hey, I met Hamilton and that was pretty cool. I don't want to do it, but I know that that's out there. Then I've done my job. And, some people did that for me. My aunt and uncle did that to me by showing me things, and I just want to repay that to my community.
Yeah, I think it's our social responsibility, man. It's we've gotten away. I think we've gotten away from it. But I'm confident that we're starting to see how important we are to each other. That's not speaking just within the Black community, the Chinese community, whatever. We all have a social responsibility to each other, and like you said, there needs to be representation, and I think equity is one of those words that's really tossed around a lot, but it's important, and I would say more equity than like equality. Right? I don't necessarily subscribe to the idea that the world is equal.
No, it's not. No. There's always going to be, unless we become just a purely socialist society or something like that, but there's always going to be.
There's some people that are born with outrageous talent that, that you and I will never be able to, we don't have that. You know what I mean? And that's a reality, but everyone should have the opportunity, should have the ability to get what they need to progress some way, shape, or form, right? You need
talking about access and equity.
It's really what it is, and that's where we're striving to get better. So you finished the PhD, and now you are working in Florida. Well, you spent some time in Washington State. Washington State, in the middle of real nowhere. It looked. I mean, I saw pictures of you. And it looked nice, and I had an opportunity to come up there and drive through Washington. It was beautiful. That was during the summertime, though. So yeah,
I'll talk about Washington. So Washington was really cool because it was my first time living in an area that wasn't on the East Coast for a long period of time, and it's wonderful. I mean, socially, it wasn't the best because I lived in rural Washington State. So when people think of, the Pacific Northwest, you think of Portland and Seattle. Oh, no. There's another side of it. But I got to see a part of the world that's one of the most beautiful places on the earth or in the United States. And I just want to say, if you got a chance to go check it out. It's pretty sweet.
Sure. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on that before we end, because you've had a really you've had a great experience in different institutions and in different parts of the country, and that's that helped shape who you are today, right? And I think you've been an example of someone who is okay with being uncomfortable, right? Leaving your, I mean, you left South Carolina, you went to Maryland. From Maryland, you went to Virginia, from Virginia, you went to back to South Carolina. You know what I mean? You've been moving,
Hmm.
and then to up and move to Washington is a huge, that's a huge deal, right? And specifically, I mean, I know from traveling from California to the East Coast that people looked at me, you came all the way out here, but
Why'd you come here?
why
Yeah,
come here, right?
yeah,
But I remember distinctly, like when I talk to people about, like, oh yeah, come to California. Like California seems like a planet. And I'm like, well, it's just, I mean, it's on the other side of the country, but yeah, okay.
hmm,
And now, you're in Florida, and so yeah, man, I think that's really cool, and I'm happy that you've kind of like taken the time to do this and really talk about your experiences, and I didn't feel like it was your cookie cutter. You know what I mean? I felt like you were very
yeah.
about your experiences, and yeah, man. So I guess I'm saying all that to say thank
Oh no, man. Thank you for having me. You've been a friend since I've known you, and we've had a lot of interactions over the course of over those years. But I think in the last few years, the transition that you're making and things that you're doing with Love Lab, is really important and vital to not just our community, but to the community as a whole. And if you're keeping along this path, you're going to be pretty successful, and you know,
you. Well,
you're going to be one for the ages. So thank you for inviting me.
yeah, man. I appreciate it. We'll do it. We'll do it again, and this time I won't make you burn your. What are you cooking right now?
Oh, some butter chicken meatballs.
Butter
That's
chicken.
right. Yeah, they're sitting stewing in the sauce right now. It's not gonna taste like anything like my favorite restaurant, but we're getting close. I
Cool.
got naan bread, so that's all I need.
Good, good for you supporting your local international store.
That's right. That's right.
Cool, man. All right. Well, we'll do this again sometime.
All right, fam. Take it easy.